Hey guys, it's Apurva. Today we're gonna make our player jump. To do that, we're gonna take a look at what are variables, how to use them, if statements, and player input. So let's jump right into it. In the last video, we made our player move forward. But right now, we can control our player, and it's a bit boring. When making games, you always want to make sure that your player enjoys the game. So, in our game, we are gonna make our player jump when the user presses the space bar. So let's open Visual Studio. On this line, we're adding a forward force of 400 and multiplying it with time.delta. However, we should never use a magic number in our code. What do I mean by that? Well, this is a magic number. I have already made a short about this, so I'm gonna put that in the description and in the card up there. What magic numbers are? They are undeclared variables. This 400 is fine here, but it would save us a lot of time if we can modify this value in the inspector instead of hard coding it. So, to do that, what we use are called variables. In C#, variables are like a container. They contain different types of data. There are many types of data, but the main 4 data types you need to remember are integer, which stores integer numbers, float, which stores decimal numbers, string stores texts, and the last one is BOOL, the simplest of all, because it can either be true or false. So, creating a variable looks like this. Unity lets us edit a variable in the inspector. To do that, we mark it as public. However, currently this variable is unassigned. The variable has no value. We can assign a default value just by typing equal to and the value. We can also modify its value through code. Now, to make this 400 into a variable, we go up here and type public so that we can edit this value in the inspector. Then the type of the variable, in our case, float. We can use an int here or integer here, but I want to fine tune the value in decimals if I have to. Then we can give it any name. In our case, we are going to call it forward force. And we can set a default value. In our case, we are going to set 400. And now we can replace this 400 with forward force. Now, if we save our code and hit play, you will see everything runs just like before, except we get option to edit this forward force in the inspector. Now, let's go to the fun part, player input. One way to do it is by using if statements. And that's the way we are going to do it. Creating an if statement is very easy. Just type if followed by 2 parentheses and open and close curly brackets. This is the basic structure of an if statement. If statements allows you to execute code if a certain condition is met. You put your code here and in this parenthesis you put your condition. For example, if 3 is bigger than 2, this is always going to be true, so this code is always going to be executed. Now, if I type 3 is less than 2, this is false, so this code is never gonna execute. Here are some new operators for you. When you want to equal to something, we usually use this. But in programming, this means you are assigning a value to something. In order to compare something if they are equal or not, you need to use this. And not equal to is this. I know it's confusing at first, but as you write more code, you eventually even don't have to think about it. If you are enjoying this video, make sure you give it a like and a sub to the channel, keeps me motivated. Thank you. Now, we want to check if the player is pressing the spacebar. So, we need to type input.getKeyDown, open and close parentheses, and in quotation mark type space. Again, make sure you put a capital letter where I am putting one. Now, whatever I put in this curly brackets is going to be executed if the player presses the spacebar. So what we want is to make the player jump. We want to add force in the y-axis. Now we can type rb.addForce open and close parentheses new vector 2 and open and close parentheses, type 0 in the x-axis because we don't want any forward force when you press space, and 5000 for the y-axis because we want to make the player jump. Multiply that with time.delta time. Now if we save this code and hit play, you will see that when I press space the player jumps. And also make sure you take the forward force down from 400 to 100 so that the player goes a lot slower so that we can see him jump. Great. Now what can we do is again make sure we declare the variables. So up here we can type public float and we can call it jump force and set the value to 5000 F. You will see me do this when I type a float number, I end it with a F. We can leave it as it is, but in some cases Unity will complain. So it's a good practice to always include that. However, you don't need to type an I when declaring integer numbers. This only applies to float numbers. Now we can replace this 5000 jump force. Now if I save the script and run the game, voila! It feels like a game. If you make it this far, that means you are great. You really want to learn Unity, and that's a great thing. Again, remember, you don't have to understand everything here. I didn't when I started out, and that's completely fine. Also, one thing we can do is check the player input in the update function instead of fixed update, because fixed update runs fixed amount of time every second. Player input might get delayed. That's something you don't need to worry about right now, but we can change it. Congratulations on making your first player movement code. I really felt huge joy when I first programmed my player movement. It was great for me, and I'm sure it is for you too. I hope to see you in the next video of this series. Until then, goodbye.